Thanks for joining us today. My name is Chris, and in addition to being an Airstream owner myself, I get to work with Airstream's brand ambassadors to share their stories of adventure and knowledge. Today's Ask an Airstreamer will focus on working remotely from your Airstream. To submit your questions at any point today, go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll do our best to answer all of them, but if we run out of time, we'll share an email address at the end to submit your questions. Also, don't worry about writing everything down. We're recording today's session and we'll make it available on airstream.com. Early next week, you can look for an email to this video. Before kicking things off, I want to call out two quick things. There's a 2-question survey that will pop up after we wrap up today. We'd love your feedback so we can be liked and what things we can do better in future editions. And finally, at the end of today's session, we'll share a promo code for Airstream Supply Company, which is part magazine, part travel guide, and part outfitter. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. First, we'll hear from our panelists. A little bit more about where they are, what kind of work they do, and what kind of Airstream they're in. We'll have a discussion around going from office to open road. We'll dig into some of the practicalities of working from the road. We'll also talk about important resources while you're on the road, specifically to working, which is staying connected and staying powered up. And then at the end, we'll have a dedicated question and answer session. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to introduce Airstream's founder, Wally Byam. And in this picture, he is, this is one of the caravans that he led. This is the one in Africa back in 1959 and 1960. And this is a picture of him working from the road and running Airstream during one of these caravans. And in this picture, you can see Wally recording into a dictaphone, sending feedback back to Jackson Center on how to make the products better. And this DNA still lives with Airstream today. There's a management program that requires every manager at Airstream to actually go out and travel once a year in a vehicle at least and stay close to the experience. So let's learn a little bit about our panelists of folks who are working from the road today. First, we have Christine and Aaron, who are full-time Airstreamers in their interstate. They're entrepreneurs, explore the US and build their business helping RVers stay healthy. Next, we have Kina, who's an avid adventurer and founder of a technology company. He and his family are traveling the country and are on a mission to show others and businesses that working remotely is possible and productive. And then we have Justin and Ariele, who are part-time digital nomads on a journey to educate would-be full-timers on how to build a successful rolling business. Justin works full-time for a marketing software company. Let's learn a little bit more about Christine and Aaron and where they are today.
Hey guys, I'm Christine, this is Aaron, and we're currently near Spokane, Washington. And we started full-timing in January 2019. So this will be our 3rd winter, and we live in a interstate, so it's a Sprinter van chassis. And the 2 of us live in here full-time, and we work together on our new business, which we started back in 2018, and it's called Iron Fitness. I'm a certified personal trainer and a nutrition coach, so we offer that completely online for people. So no matter where we are or where our clients are, we can help them live their healthiest lifestyle. And that means many different things for each individual. So it's customizable, and we just really help people live the best life that they can live.
And Chris and I both came from the corporate world background. We had careers for about 15 plus years, and Chris was in advertising and I was in automotive, both in management and operations, also a little bit of sales. So our positions couldn't transfer onto the road. So that's kind of how we chose to go into more of our passion side of it. And it's worked out very well for us. Our journey started about 5 years ago with the sale of our house. And that rabbit hole just changed our whole mindset and our whole, set of goals for life and just everything. So we've kind of just downsized and then planned for this lifestyle of living in a van and running our business. So nice to meet everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Before we toss it over to Kina, what's your favorite, you got to think of that one place that you've worked remote. Where has that been?
Oh man,
Well, Aaron's a big fan of Utah.
I am.
And as far as beauty goes, we kind of separate our favorite spots, West Coast and East Coast. So they're just two different animals. You know, the West Coast, you have your big, beautiful natural lands. And then the East Coast, you have your energetic cities. And we really are city people just as much as we are or outdoorsy people. So I'd say like Bryce Canyon, Moab, that's huge for us in terms of the beautiful locations. And then
Central Park on the East Coast.
yeah, for the East Coast, we really love New York City.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Kina, let's hear from you and the family there. Where are you guys? What Airstream are you in? And tell us a little bit about what you do for work.
Yeah, so we currently right now are in North Carolina. We are kind of in a place called Transylvania County. And we've been on the road for about a month and a half. And for work, I own a technology company called Zipper. It's a cloud-based media collaboration platform. We are traveling in a 1971 Airstream International that's been retrofitted with solar and composting toilet. So our mission is to go coast to coast. We're on a 4-month tour to kind of show how far we can push the boundaries of remote work and remote education. My wife Nellie is educating both our son Asher and Story from the Airstream, and I'm working from the Airstream as well. And with my business, it's really about pushing up lots of content to the cloud. So that's kind of what we're after, is to show how you can do this from the road.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. So from entrepreneurs to now Justin and Ariele, which is kind of part freelancer, part corporate job, part also an entrepreneur as well. Where are you guys and what are you up to?
Yeah, so we're Justin and Ariele. We also have an 8-month-old Jovi who has gone on a couple of trips with us thus far. We were full-timing in 2017 and 2018. Traveled across the country a couple of times. We traveled about 70,000 miles, visited about 35 national parks, and we worked full-time along the way. Like you said earlier, I work for a software company. I work on the educational division, I created a content marketing course that actually teaches people, gives them a skill set on how to upskill with a specific skill that you can actually work from the road and do and get paid for. And while we were doing that, we started this travel brand called Wild We Wander, which really helps educate and inspire people to live this alternative lifestyle from all the different trial and error. And that's really what you experience when you're traveling, is just trial and error and being able to teach other people so that they can do it better and learn from you. We are currently at our residence. We own a home in Asheville, North Carolina. And it's really the next stage of what we're doing next. We hope to open a retreat space where we can have people come out and experience this lifestyle and transition to living this way, where it's not something where it's abrasive and upfront, where you're just sort of thrust into it like we were. We actually have one of our friends full-timing in it right now who are going to be full-timing next year. So we're kind of helping them along the way, along the ropes, while they're planning for their trips next year.
Awesome. It's great to see both of the variety of vehicles. So Christine and Aaron in an interstate, Kina in a vintage 50-year-old Airstream, and then Justin and Ariele, family, kind of this hybrid approach, which is really great. Justin, I know that you have some experience, specifically when you think about remote work. There are a lot of folks on this Zoom who probably have jobs right now that they could just pick up, have an Airstream and head out. But there are probably also some folks too who are thinking about how to make that transition, right? I work for a big company or even a smaller company. Even though a lot of folks are work from home right now, that will eventually sort itself out and change. What was your strategy in terms of creating an opportunity for yourself, pre-COVID, to basically take your corporate job on the road?
Sure. And even before that, we have a 22-foot Airstream Bambi Sport, just saying which model we lived in for context. It's one of the smaller of the Airstream units. So when working if you want to work from the road, and you want to keep the current job that you have, I think the first thing is, are you able to do your job remotely? Meaning, like, are you able to get the majority of your work done through an internet connection, which could be like Zoom calls. It could be working on Google Drive and sending files. That's like the first thing. If you're able to do that, then it's really starting to show the current job that you have, that they can trust you when they're not seeing you. Because that's a big thing. Being in the office, people feel like that's been the, 9 to 5, you're in an office, people can see you, they know what you're doing. And I think we're getting to this transition, especially with everything that's going on right now in the world. Like, people are working more remotely. So anybody who's watching, if you have a job that you're working remotely right now, consider this like your trial run to be able to show the business that you're working for that you can be a valued contributor even when you're not in the office and they're not seeing you. And if you're able to do that and you start building trust with your manager, then it's going to make this lifestyle a lot easier. I think if those are the first two things, if you're able to do that, I think that's like the starting point to being able to work successfully from the road.
It's a great insight to use this period right now to kind of build that case. Kina, I know with you as an entrepreneur, you answer to your board, who's invested in the growth of the company there. How do you manage this relationship between, hey, I'm out on the road full time, this mission to show people and businesses that it's possible, but also, answering to your board so they don't, think about the delivery and performance of what you're up to on the business side. I'm gonna unmute you because you're. Oh,
There we
there you
go.
go.
Sorry. So yeah, that's a great question. And my situation is a little bit different. Because my business is all about remote media collaboration, part of this mission was to put the business first and to see what was capable from a media perspective, from a media creation perspective, to kind of collaboration in the cloud. So with my board, I approved everything before I set out on this adventure. And the reason we did it really was twofold. One, to kind of push the boundaries of remote work, and then second, to kind of try to give our kids the life that we really wanted to give them. And so my board is well aware of the trip because it's a good thing for the business to actually show the platform in use, right? I'm eating my own dog food as the CEO of a tech company. And really what we're doing is creating a ton of content for a lot of partners and using Zipper as the main platform to push media to the cloud and collaborate on. So it's been really interesting, and we're learning a ton, especially around connectivity and workflows and stuff like that with all the partners that we have involved.
Awesome. That's great. A lot of good advice in terms of creating that opportunity now. Each of you has a lot of great insight on the practicalities of working from home, right? So you think of even folks who are working at home now, usually, two people, a couple in a house somewhere, having to negotiate, hey, I have a meeting at this time and you have a meeting at this time, who's going to watch the kid? Can I have this room so I can do my video conference? So a lot of considerations in even that. Taking it on the road, I think, creates some interesting opportunities and also some challenges. I would love to hear from Christine and Aaron a little bit about in their interstate. How do you guys divide up who's working where? How do you guys work in such a small space?
So our interstate, yeah, it's 22 feet long. It is extremely small, and you could kind of think of it as one office. And Christine works in the front, and I work in the back, kind of like cubicles, I guess. So we're together, but we're separated by about, 12 feet in between us. And since we work together on the same business, a lot of times we're kicking ideas back and forth to each other. So it's really nice to be able to see each other, talk to each other, communicate, just like popping your head over the cubicle entrance there. So Chris has a built-in desk up front, you can see, with the driver's side swiveled around. And then I use a laptop desk in the back, which is kind of like a lounge area, seating for 5. So, and there's tables that can put up in both spaces. So in the back where we are right now, we could have, conference calls together, or if we needed to have like an in-person meeting or something like that, we could. So all of that came into play when we were searching for like the perfect van to do what we wanted to do. And this interstate fit the bill for us.
Couple of questions coming in. One specifically on ergonomics. So when you think about carving out 8-hour workday in the van comfortable at the end of the day, or what's the long-term kind of comfort of the setup that you guys have created there?
I think you need to move
You need to
positions
move, yeah.
quite a bit.
Once in
So
a while, I'll stand up and I'll stand in the kitchen galley. And we do have an anti-fatigue mat in there now, so I can stand on that mat and put my computer like where the stove is, for example. You can just put it there and work there. Just getting up and moving helps a lot, and I think that's also why Aaron's laptop desk really is good, because he can get up and move from seat to seat if he wants to, or just standing up every hour or two, moving your legs, and that goes for any office. So it's a lot of the same principles that apply at a regular office apply for in here. Just got to find your comfortable situation and then remember to get up and move every hour or two.
yeah, we try to, recommend and remind people that you do need to move. And in an RV, the space is so small. Chris can reach the fridge from her seat.
It's dangerous.
Like the bathroom is a half a step away. Like you don't get your steps in during the day. It's even worse than being in an office. So you need to keep that in mind. Take little short walks, but
schedule some walk breaks. Like maybe it's 3 times a day, or maybe it's 4 times a day. But it is a nice opportunity for the two of us to get up, get out, breathe some fresh air, and just stand, move your legs.
Yeah, that's great. And I know this one's for you guys. Another question just around kind of the logistics of receiving mail. Maybe some folks still get paid with checks through the mail. You guys are full-time on the road. How do you manage catching up with that stuff?
Well, most of in terms of like bills and invoicing, most of that's electronic now. Our business is online, so people are paying online. So we use an online service called Stripe. We also use PayPal and stuff. So for mail specifically, it doesn't relate to our finances as much, just because so many things are moved online. There are a few things that we still write checks for or get bills for, but that's really far between. And we have all of our mail sent to one spot where a trusted family member can go through it and scan things to us if we need to.
yeah, but there are mailing services that a lot of people do use to manage their mail. But for us, we just don't really get that much mail. And, the whole point of this is to be digital and to be remote and to be online. So
yeah,
just, converting all that in advance helps a ton.
I think the biggest things for mail are like tax documents, where a lot of tax documents are still paper. And then also like voting, your absentee ballots, things like that are important. But other than that, most of it really is paperless.
Awesome. Justin and Ariele, let's have some pictures on the screen of your setup when you're out and about. Tell us a little bit about what that setup's like, and then also if you have a point of view on the mail, that'd be great too.
Yeah, she's very excited about our setup. So we have our travel trailer is the same size as Christine and Aaron. So it's 22 feet. It's 22 feet long, and we really see it as our living space. And then the tow vehicle is really converted into the place that I do the majority of the work from. So I tend to either do work from outside at like a picnic table or a chair if I'm on the move, or we had a truck when we were traveling full time where we had a camper in the back that we could work from, but then also it had a super cab. So I was able to sit in the back seat and put my laptop on the center console and work from there. So we liked the idea of having a travel trailer because we can have the separation from like work and office. But obviously there's times where it's like raining or you really can't get out. Like if you're in a Walmart parking lot and you're trying to get work done and you don't want to have your doors open and, people walking by if you're on a call. So we can sit in the dinette and face towards the window. So if we're doing like a Zoom call and like we're doing right now, Ariele can walk through the unit, and then it's just me on like a video call, because I do like the majority of the calls. And just like Christine and Aaron said, when you have a small space, like if you just took a shower, like you need to be able to get back to the room while someone is like maybe on a video call. So really you learn those sort of things when you live in it and work out of it full time.
I've found that when I'm working in my Airstream with another person, there's this kind of negotiation over communication in the morning that happens. Like, okay, here's my schedule, what's yours? And you're trying to slot things around that or plan in advance, so you're not, you don't get the side eye from across the room about making too much noise in that. Kina, let's hear a little bit about your approach to work and where you do it.
Yeah, so You know, our Airstream is pretty vintage, and I do the majority of my work kind of in the dinette up front. I'm on a lot of calls, so if I have relatively good service, I usually take my calls outside, walking around. I think better when I'm walking. So most of my calls, if they're not video calls, if they're just conference calls, I will take outside of the camper walking around. Usually our schedule, because we have 2 kids, you know, we wake up, we make breakfast, and then the kids are usually outside with my wife doing something, either educational or fun. And then that's usually when I go in to get my first stint of work done. And then we'll take lunch and as a family and do stuff. And then I get my second stint of work, usually before dinner time. And then after dinner, when the kids are in bed, that's where I do the majority of my uploading via Zipper, just because it's quiet, the kids are sleeping. And, you know, if I have a solid connection, I push everything up usually during that time period. But yeah, most of my work is done either in the dinette or on calls wandering around in beautiful landscapes. So.
Awesome. Everyone has a slightly different approach. Christine and Aaron, follow-up question for you guys. This one is, you guys are both in the interstate there, and you both have to be on an audio call at the same time. Does that ever happen, or with your business, you guys are talking to the same clients usually at the same time anyway, or is there, how do you manage that conflict?
That is pretty rare. So Chris is like the front of the business. She actually communicates and is the personal trainer. So a lot of my stuff is more of like the back office work. So we use earbuds a ton, you know, so if she's on calls, I have my earbuds in and am doing my own thing. But we do have a door that separates right in the middle of our van too. It's like a floor to ceiling closet door. And so when we close that, it partitions off the front and the back, and that gives us some extra privacy. But if we were to be on the same, or needed to be on calls at the same time, I think, like Kina said, you know, I would go outside most of the time and
Step outside.
yeah, for sure.
Or use Justin's approach of the tow vehicle conference room in the front and just peel it off like that. Yeah, so many meetings today are happening on the same platform we're using for this webinar. So gone are the days, at least in my experience, of just straight conference calls. And here we are on video all the time. And when you're working from some of the most beautiful places, that kind of presents an interesting opportunity on how much do you share and what is your Zoom background when you're working. And just starting to think about the optics of all this. And Justin, I know that you guys have some experience with this. What have you done along the way?
Yeah, so Zoom years ago when we were doing this didn't have virtual backgrounds. So I wanted a consistent background. So no matter where we were, people, when I was dialing into a call, because I was the only remote person dialing in on like a 4-foot by 6-foot screen. So I want to make sure that it's consistent with what people are looking at. And it's nice to have a nice backdrop, but for the work that I do, I'm doing it because, or the lifestyle that we were living with the work that I do, we were living that lifestyle because we wanted to do that, not necessarily show everybody every minute of what we were working. Because I feel like if you're dialing in, people are in a conference room, it's not, you don't want to do that too often and sort of rub people the wrong way. So what I did was you'll see I had this like serape that was in the back of the truck. So when I would dial in from a call from there, that would be it. But when I dial in from the back seat of the truck, that would be the backdrop I always had. So no matter where we were, I would try and do calls from from the same place. But now Zoom, you can do virtual backgrounds, so you can create an illusion of where you are and be wherever you want. So I think technology has just really progressed in 2 years, which makes me really excited about this type of lifestyle, because I feel like it's only going to get easier because technology is making it easier for us.
I think that the technology piece is a perfect segue to what we've received a lot of questions on, which is staying connected. And the whole connectivity piece is so critical to running a business on the road. So in this next section, we'll talk about, the first piece of this is the planning component. And there are a lot of great tools online to understand if you'll have connectivity before you hitch up and tow your Airstream or drive your Airstream to the place where you intend to go work. The second piece of this, we'll dig into cell boosters a little bit and how they work. There's a great decision tree in here from a a group online, Mobile Internet Resource Center, that publishes a lot of great content on this topic. Thirdly, we'll discuss just different types of mobile internet setups. So, from a hotspot that you could bring with you, or even using your phone as a hotspot, and what are the differences between that and an embedded mobile router with an antenna on the roof inside the vehicle. And then we'll spend a little bit of time understanding how much bandwidth do you actually need. So we have a chart from Zoom and Microsoft Teams that really goes into the detail on bandwidth requirements to facilitate those types of meetings. So the first piece is planning. And this is, in my experience, I think over the last 4 years or so, this has really been a huge area of improvement. Before, my go-to was I would go to the carrier's website and look at their coverage map, and then I would try to zoom in and figure out if there was coverage where I was going to be camping. And now there are a lot of great resources that make that a bit easier, including user-generated reviews from people who have actually been there. So I'm a huge fan of coverage, which is on the left, which allows you to basically toggle off and on any of the carriers and zoom in on a map and see if there's coverage where you're going to go. And then also some tools like Campendium. But I'll toss it over to Christine and Aaron, have you guys talk a little bit about this more, because you guys are at the front lines of this every day. So how do you guys plan for connectivity?
Yeah, Campendium is our #1 app that we use, and they have user reviews. It's all user reviews in there. So the word of mouth from another person that's been there before that says, hey, we've gotten this signal with this carrier, that means a lot, and we found that to be very, very accurate. So the first step is using tools just like this to find the areas that should have coverage or are supposed to have coverage. And then, since there are so many variables between, congestion and hills and, mountains and just all types of different things, you really do need to have backup plans, especially if you need to have that connectivity for work, which is, basically what we're all here for.
I'll even, we have this on the right of the slide here. I'll do that planning. I'll look on coverage. I'll go back and read the reviews on Campendium, because some of the folks who contribute reviews are super thoughtful and will even give you like upload and download speeds. Like they'll give you the performance of that network in that area, which is great. But connectivity is key, I think, to enabling all the work that we're talking about. So I'll often, just to be sure, find a local ranger or official who works, especially if I'm going camping in national forest land or BLM, and say, hey, is there Verizon coverage here? And they know, because there are folks driving around those areas all the time. Justin, you have some tips here too in terms of planning for when the internet isn't there.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I think the first is if there's a tall mountain, it's likely that the signal's not going to get over it. So it's one reason why we like having a travel trailer is if wherever we drop it for our home where we're living, I can go off and drive around and find the internet connection in the truck, which is essentially the mobile office. If you're farther out, like if you're boondocking, which means that you're camping without any hookups or anything, and you go pretty far out, a booster might work. A booster we use WeBoost, and it boosts our hotspot signal times 10, but it works better when a cell tower is not being accessed, meaning that a lot of people aren't using it, like within a city. So I think just driving around the night before, if you have video calls and everything, just make sure that you have a connection. Because again, it goes back to trust. If your manager and your team is allowing or cool with you living and working from the road, you don't want to make yourself stand out by saying you're missing a call. So I think it's up to you to make sure that if you do have calls or if you need to be available, that you're putting yourself in a spot for those times where you can be accessed over Wi-Fi or a hotspot signal.
Yeah, and a lot of times Justin would schedule his calls for kind of like a block or maybe earlier in the week, so he knew that we would be out more remote like say Thursday to Sunday, and he'd have his calls like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, and sometimes driving through a city, like when we were traveling, Planet Fitness was a great spot where we knew we'd always get a signal, and we also could work out. It was working from parking lots during the day and then driving to a spot and sleeping that night. That's why we drove around so much those 2 years, because we would essentially find the signal to work during the day and then travel to a spot at night if we were in spots where it was a lot more inconsistent.
It's great insights there. I would also, when I would do this, I would coordinate my moves on the weekend with the goal of arriving someplace on a Saturday. And then if for some reason there wasn't connectivity, I still had that Sunday to go sort things out. And then for me, I would just kind of park for the week, because the moving piece for me, it was super disruptive to staying in a rhythm of working and getting a lot of stuff done. Some questions here around multiple carriers. Maybe just a quick show of hands from the group here. How many of you guys have more than one carrier when it comes to staying connected? So Christine and Aaron for sure. Kina for sure. Awesome. Yeah, I've found that, well, I guess I'll kick it over to Christine and Aaron here, are the experts. Who, you guys tell us a little bit more about the multi-carrier setup that you guys had.
Yeah, so what we've learned is that, of the major four carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint, that's kind of the range from best coverage to least coverage nationwide. So we went with Verizon with a nationwide unlimited hotspot plan as our main source. And that thing has worked great. We use that, 90+% of the time. And then our cell phones are on T-Mobile, which we can use those as a hotspot, as a backup if we need to. And so, we're talking about cell tower congestion. That's a real thing that actually happens. You get into a certain spot and, everybody hears Verizon's the best. Well, then that's also the most people, maybe on that network. So it definitely can save your butt to have two options or more. I think we've heard of people having three.
Yeah. Awesome. It's a good transition into cellular boosters. So a lot of questions here on what they are. And I thought we'd spend a little bit of time just breaking down the components of it. And then the next slide is a decision tree that the folks at Mobile Internet Resource Center have put together just to help inform your choice on to get one or not. So think of a cellular booster as a hearing aid and a megaphone kind of all rolled into one. It has three main components. So there's an internal antenna, or sometimes a window or panel antenna. There's an amplifier that's taking the existing signal and increasing it. And then there's an external antenna that kind of sits on the roof. So think of it, outside antenna catching what signals available. Internal amplifier usually sits, it definitely sits inside the vehicle. And then an internal antenna that's basically rebroadcasting what you're receiving from the tower and what you're trying to send to the tower. I think just two pieces to call out, and then we'll toss it over to the panel. It's really important as you're looking to buy these that you look at the specifications, particularly around how much vertical separation needs to be between the two antennas. Because if they're too close together, so if the height of them is too close together, they start feeding back into each other and then they don't end up working, right? So if you look at those requirements, don't automatically get pulled into buying the biggest and most powerful and most expensive one, because usually those bigger ones, especially as you look at ones that are meant for homes, have so much power that the separation requirements are not physically possible in an Airstream unless you're going to put a pole outside that's going to separate those two antennas. And then you'll get a lot of feedback on the actual units themselves in terms of if they're feeding back or oscillating. Usually it's a red light. So just understanding what are the space requirements, and then what's the feedback that amplifier is going to give you on if it's working or not. I found that the best kind of impact that these have from my experience in boosting both voice and data, because they do both, is help on the upload, kind of easing the upload connection if I'm in a place where the I'm on the fringes of connectivity. Christine, Aaron, Justin, any insight or builds to that? Justin, I'll go to you first. I see you nodding.
Oh yeah. So we actually have WeBoost mounted hard on the Airstream. So when we plug in, or we can plug our portable power source into it, and we can get connectivity inside the entire Airstream. But I also have a portable one on the truck, so I can drive around and I can test where a signal is where I'm driving. I think it's helpful to have it on both. Again, like if you're like Christine and Aaron, where you have like a motorhome, obviously you can have it hardwired in there. But if you do have a tow vehicle, I'd recommend putting it on both, so that you could also just drive around and look for a connection as well. And sometimes you'll find with the external antenna, sometimes getting like an aftermarket one that's a little bit more, maybe it's a little bit bigger, can really help the signal as well, versus the one that they give you stock. Just a couple of considerations.
Justin, do you ever get it? I know that on those boosters, they have omnidirectional antennas, so picking up kind of equally around, or they have ones that you can actually point and focus to a tower. Have you gone down that road of trying to figure out where the tower is and let me point the thing, or the omnidirectionals work just fine?
I've seen some really cool people out there with, like, they have their own tower and they can move it around. But I think the omnidirectional one, again, because we move so frequently, we didn't stay in a spot longer than 4 or 5 days. And a lot of times it was just 1 or 2. So it was just easier to have the omnidirectional one. Though I would say that if you are someone who would be in a spot for, weeks to even a couple of months at a time, maybe investing in one where you can test with the signal a little bit more. But I think it's really just through trial and error, and starting small and not spending too much on something, and hoping that that's going to be the exact solution you want.
That's right. Good advice. This next slide here is one way to approach a decision on if you should get a booster or not. So if we just follow the yes piece here of do you travel to different locations? So I think everyone on this call would say yes. Moving over to basically what is your setup, which we'll dig into a little bit next. But looking at saying, hey, I really depend on just my phones. I don't have an external router, but it's my phones. It's really driving the connectivity in my Airstream. Then looking at a cellular booster would definitely be a good investment, because that's your main backbone or connection to the internet. If you start to look at more integrated systems like Airstream Connect or any of the other mobile routers plus antenna on the roof, I think testing and looking at different options like a MIMO antenna will help kind of guide your decision. But trial and error, starting small. You can always eBay the one that you bought if you want to buy something bigger, so it's not money lost. But any builds to that from field experience from folks? Christine, yeah? Christine?
Yeah, I'd like to say, we started out with a WeBoost. If you're researching this, like WeBoost pops up, and it works and it's a great antenna, but they're expensive. They're like $500. And honestly, we found ourselves not using it very much at all. So if you really want to be out in the middle of nowhere in a very remote location, that's where you need these big boosters or this 20-foot pole with a directional antenna pointing at the tower. That's how you pick up that really, I don't even want to say strong signal, but that's how you pick up the signal and get some usable data. But most people, if you're going to campgrounds or you're going like on the East Coast, we didn't use any boosters or anything. You just your modem or your hotspot or your cell phone that picks up. The coverage is very good if you're on any major highway or major roads. Like there's cell towers almost everywhere. So I would start small. The MIMO antenna, if you want to do some research, just research MIMO antenna versus cell booster. And that'll kind of get you going in 2 different directions and try to figure out which one would work best for you.
It's good insight. Where are you going, right? If you look at even just the coverage map of the West Coast, you see where all the holes start to be, which probably are some awesome, epic places to go camping, right? And mountains and forests and wilderness, versus the East Coast, where it's basically, you know, solid. So where you're going to go, I think is great. And I found that with the connectivity piece, like the more tools that you can have, especially if you're trying to run a business from your Airstream, or you know, be part of a business, like the more tools you have in your tool bag, the better. But it's always great to hear from the experience of what you guys actually use in the field. This next slide is really, you know, when we talk about connectivity in vehicles, this is again from the Mobile Internet Resource Center, some kind of a free guide that they have on this. But we have, you know, two common approaches, and there are probably another 10, but thinking of two. One is, I'm going to buy a mobile hotspot from any of the carriers. I'll put it in the vehicle. I'll keep it plugged in all the time. And, you know, maybe I'll hook up an external antenna to it to, you know, improve the connectivity of that hotspot. So some of the benefits of a system like that is they're affordable. I mean, you can usually pick these up for a couple $100s from the carrier. It's portable, so if you want to kind of pick this up and go work from, you know, another place, it's pretty easy to just, you know, put that in the vehicle, or take it, you know, on a hike with you, wherever you want to go. The portability piece of it, and they're plug and play. You turn them on, and if there's signal, they just work. You know, some of the trade-offs that go into that approach is, you know, sometimes you get, you know, battery swelling just from leaving something plugged in all the time, right? It gets hot, you leave this thing plugged in for a year, you know, the battery might swell a little bit. But I think more importantly is that these tend to be carrier specific. So usually they're locked to a carrier. So in this multi-carrier setup that we've talked about, if you wanted to take the hotspot approach, you might have to have a couple different hotspots, or find one that's open that you can swap the SIM cards to. And then the other piece of this is it's consumer level gear. So if you want to do anything, you know, advanced beyond just turn it on and it works, you're going to probably hit some, you know, roadblocks there. The second one on the right is embedding a cellular or mobile router into the Airstream, and then taking advantage of a large external antenna on the top. So some of the, you know, the pros to this is most of these options are open. And by that, I mean, they're not locked to a specific carrier. So you could have, you know, a handful of SIM cards. Some of these devices even hold more than one SIM card. And you can set it up to basically fail over to which connectivity plan is available, or which carrier is available. Airstream Connect has this functionality, as do many others out there. The trade-off, or some of the considerations for this is they're more expensive than a hotspot. And then when you look at wanting to upgrade these in the future, just looking at what's physically installed in the vehicle versus what can I just, you know, unplug and plug in if a faster modem comes out in the future. So just two common setups. The URL on the bottom of the screen here has a lot more great information on this topic. Want to open up to, you know, Justin, Ariele, or Kina, any builds to this slide in terms of what you guys have experienced in the field, or, you know, any clear pros or cons to either of these setups? Justin, or Kina, I'll kick it over to you first.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're running the dual SIM card. It's worked really well. So far, there's only been, you know, maybe a couple places, but I think, you know, someone brought it up before, you know, starting out west and moving east, you're pretty solid on the East Coast, it seems like, from our experience so far. But, you know, as we turn around and head back out west, we plan on getting pretty remote. And I think, Chris, that's where the satellite system comes in as well. But so far, it's worked great.
Awesome. Justin, I'll let you add in here.
Yeah, I think you might not always get the connection. I think you can do the best, but even sometimes you're going to go places that you want to stay, and it might not, the connection might not get out there. So I think having like a backup option and making sure that you can do work with offline tools, like I use Google Drive almost for everything. and they have like offline accessibility so that I'm able to still
Yep.
do work and then I can find a connection. So even if I just need to update everything and then go get a connection and then it all uploads and then I go back out, I think that's the thing here is that like, it's sometimes you might not always get the connection. I think do start small. Like Christine and Aaron said that some like Weeboost can be expensive and other things can be expensive, but there are a lot of good options. Like you said, Chris, like possibly going to eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist,
Yep.
and people can give it for like half off. So I think it's like doing some research, seeing what sort of options you have available, but then having like a backup option so that you're not just banking on the connection, because it is very real where you might have a connection and then you don't, and then knowing what that mitigation plan looks like.
Smart. It's a good time to talk about how much connectivity do you need. So when you're thinking about you're going to do that test before before the workday starts or as part of the planning process. Here are two charts. These are both available online from Zoom and Microsoft. We just pulled them together here. But when you're looking at how much bandwidth do you need, this is going to be per person working. Zoom and Microsoft are both around 1.5 to 2 megabits a second. So not a ton of bandwidth and overhead required. Obviously, as you stop the video and we're just going to screen share and have an audio conversation, which is a great tactic if you ever start to run into connectivity issues, is minimize your throughput and bandwidth requirement, all the way down to we're not going to screen share. I just need to have an audio conversation with you, or maybe enable Wi-Fi calling on my phone to do the same. So not a ton of bandwidth required to be able to function. So I just wanted to kind of paint the picture, because I know we're all used to consumers seeing, fiber at the home with huge throughput. You actually don't need that much to work effectively from the road. This next slide I'm just going to cover pretty quickly because we're quickly running up against the top of the hour. But just some pro tips to think about as you're thinking about connectivity is, Justin had some great advice on a standalone portable battery solution to charge your equipment. So if you want to actually kind of take everything on the road or not work from the Airstream, maybe down by the lake or some other awesome place where you are, standalone little battery packs that you can plug in your computer, your iPad, your phone, your mobile hotspot. Test your connectivity at your location. So, where are you going to be? Really good insight from Aaron there on, hey, coverage will actually shrink and change, especially if you're in a national park where you're going to get an influx of people on the weekend, and it's going to overload the network, and it will change the connectivity that you had if you're maybe testing it during the middle of the week. And then also planning for weaker signal when it gets busy. So that same idea. Kina shared, always be charging, right? Your phone and your devices are the kind of the lifeline of staying connected. So make sure that stuff is always charged. And for me, working on the road, I always try to think of backup gear. So if that's my computer, knowing that I can easily translate my work into my iPad with a keyboard, really important, because if I'm 8 hours from the nearest computer store to go get my thing fixed, if it stopped working, that can be really disruptive. So the next piece, we talked about connectivity as a really important resource as you're working from the road. The next one is really around power. And I've organized this part of this discussion really into 3 different topics. So one is understanding capacity, right? Your ability to store energy. The consumption side a little bit, so just highlighting how much power are we using when we're inside our vehicles, and then looking at the different ways that you can actually generate and recharge your batteries once you've depleted them. So this first one around capacity is really to understand when you're looking at a battery system and it gives you a rating like 200 amp hours on the side of it, understanding what that means in terms of what's usable out of that battery system. So lead acid batteries, which is what is in most of our cars, unless you're driving an electric vehicle or a hybrid, and is currently what Airstreams ship with from the factory default today, or not from the factory, actually installed at the dealerships now, are lead acid batteries. So you can pull about 50% of power outside of that battery before you start to either get it too low or potentially damage the battery. Big innovation and step forward in the last 10 years or so is lithium, which is a fundamentally different battery chemistry, and that allows you actually to pull out 80 to 90% of energy that's stored in a battery. So big difference there when you look at the ability to kind of stay powered up on the road, the ability to pull almost double the amount of power outside of the same battery size. Some other differences with lithium is they weigh much less than lead acid batteries. And then they also last much longer from an investment standpoint, because you can actually charge them and discharge them many, many more times than you can a standard lead acid battery. Airstream started offering lithium upgrades at the dealerships just recently in the past month or so. So being able to just drop in lithium batteries at the Airstream dealership is a big step forward, especially when we look about kind of enabling remote work. The next piece here is really around capacity. Well, just a few minutes, our consumption, I should say, just a few minutes on this slide. Looking at all of the devices that we're going to plug in to enable remote work and living. So some things here, like laptops and things to keep you comfortable adds up pretty quickly. So I think from my experience, being conscious of like, oh, that phone is actually plugged in and still charging, or that iPad is charging, looking at things like that to make sure that if you're not using it, and being mindful that you have a finite amount of power if you're not plugged into a campground, that those things will add up and make a difference over time. And then this last slide here before we toss it over to the panelists here for some power tips is really around the different ways that you can generate power and recharge the batteries in your Airstream. So roughly organizing this from less power output to more power output is the vehicle alternator. So both on Airstream travel trailers and even the touring coaches, when you're driving and the Airstream travel trailer is connected to the tow vehicle, it's actually charging the batteries in both instances. So you have the ability to charge from the vehicle. Solar is another way. Airstream touring coaches and the Airstream Classic both come standard with solar. All of the Airstream travel trailers are pre-wired for solar, so easy to put it on. And then they also have in the front a way to kind of plug in an additional portable panel like what's shown in the screen here for more power. Moving over to the right, these are things that potentially, if you have the right size generator, these are things that get you in the space of, I want to run my air conditioning when I'm connected. So portable generators, if you get the right size, so looking at things in the 30 amp or more range to run your air conditioner, those will allow you to not only recharge your batteries, but basically run the entire Airstream as if you were connected to power. If it's a touring coach, this is already built in and pretty easy to manage. And then the last one, which you'll see it, obviously all the campgrounds, if they are full hookup sites, is this power pedestal, right? So kind of unlimited amount of power to do all of the things. So I'm going to toss it over to Justin real quick, just to talk a little bit about this tip on solar and lithium.
Yeah. So, and one thing you also said, Chris, is that I think using the 12-volt outlet in your car, I think it might have been Kina's tip of always keep your stuff charged if you're moving. Another tip is that you can use the 12-volt outlet and use a power inverter so that you can get like 2 AC outlets, maybe even a couple others. So that's one way of keeping your stuff charged. One thing that I think is just really helpful, like we went the portable route. So we use EcoFlow as a battery, and then this 120 watt panel from PowerFilm that we're able to take with us. It's very lightweight because some batteries are very heavy. We had a Goal Zero that was 120 pounds on our second trip across the country, and man, was that heavy to carry around. So I think when you're thinking about your setup, like do your research, but also don't go cheap, because you're going to get what you pay for. And we learned that the hard way with our first trip, where we were really just living off of our a power inverter in the car or the truck as we were driving around. So I think like having the portable solution allows me so that if I'm in the Airstream, I have the power, but I can also take the power with me if I'm in the truck or if I need to go walk around. So I think if you're someone who's more mobile, make sure that you do the research on what you actually need. Like this panel can charge this battery in 5 hours. Even I think it'd be 7 or 8 hours if it's cloudy, because there's still light. So doing the research and then figuring out what your exact situation, like you said earlier, Chris, like how much power do you actually need? If it's a laptop, it's not really going to be quite as much.
Awesome. I'm going to run these through these quick three, and then we'll transfer just the Q&A, because lots of questions to get to here. The other power pro tip here, which Justin, you just mentioned again, is this idea of like always charge all your stuff, always be charging. The second or the third one here from Christine and Aaron is thinking about trying to run as many things as possible, or charging as many things as possible directly from the 12-volt system. So when you run your inverter, there's some power lost in the conversion of DC, which is what your batteries are, to AC, which is what you'd plug your computer in to. So you lose about 10-ish or so % in that conversion. So if given the choice to charge your phone with the USB that you can plug directly into the Airstream, or putting in the adapter to plug it in the wall, go DC, because you'll be more efficient with the power. And then the last one here, knowing that we often want to go in the most beautiful places that are sometimes far away from other things, including our hardware store or automotive store, thinking about, hey, what spares do I need if I'm running a generator, or what parts do I need if I need to change the spark plug on the generator? So just starting to think about what you might need in the event that you need to do some troubleshooting if you're far away from home. So we'll pop over to some Q&A here in the last 3 or so minutes. There's a question here around, is solar charging while driving? I can take that one. Yes, absolutely. Definitely charging while you're going down the road. And then there was some follow-up on understanding a little bit about kind of multi-carrier, multi-SIM approach. Anyone have any experience there that they can add, or I can also take that one too?
Yeah, I mean, the system that we have 2 SIM cards, one Verizon, one AT&T, but that system just toggles back and forth, and you can set one as a priority if you want.
Okay.
And that seems to work really well for us.
Awesome. Christine and Aaron, any builds to that?
I was just going to say, I've heard of that setup, and that's where you buy that mobile router modem or a dual router modem. So it has room for 2 SIMs, and that just is a pretty cool setup. Like if you need internet like 100% for your job, and it's, you're going to go full board with it, that's a great setup where you have, a 9-in-1 antenna on the roof, which connects into your mobile router, and you put the 2 SIMs in there, and it just picks up as much as it can and will give you as much speed as possible out there. So that's a really cool setup, and maybe one day.
That is a cool setup. One thing I just want to add to that too is that it's a lot of, unless you have a business plan, your hotspot is going to get slowed down after like 30 gigs. So I noticed that with like Verizon, the most you can get on your hotspot is 30. So one thing you can do is try and use your phone, for instance, like on a Zoom. I think you said this earlier, Chris, like call in through audio, or if you can do certain things and use your phone where you're not using your hotspot, really conserve that hotspot data for when you need it.
It's a good one. Anyone on the cell phone booster side, folks, Justin, I think you said that you use it quite often. How much coverage would it broadcast on the inside? Did it cover the whole Airstream or outside the Airstream?
Yeah, it would cover it. It covered it outside too. I would say I had a mobile option where, like, if I needed to, I could take it off the truck and go around with it. And then this unit has a 12-volt outlet in it, so I could just plug it into that as well. So I think cell phone boosters can be so shoddy though. It's like you don't know if it's actually going to work. Like it's like you're hoping that where you are, because that's the other thing. Like you can see that you have what the reception is like, but there's no guarantee that it's actually going to work unless you have the pole where you have like an actual dish pointing somewhere. So that's why I like to be mobile when I have my booster, to actually find where the connection is the best.
Awesome. One question here, because we're talking about a lot of gear. Is this an affiliate marketing program? And no, this is not on any of this stuff. This is just, you know, things that we've used out in the field. And then question here too on Airstream Connected. I know that that's something that Airstream continues to invest in, with, you know, currently looking at, you know, next generation devices and what's the next piece there. And then just one final question here. Is anyone using anyone considered or using a satellite phone? Looks like a no on that front. All right, awesome. Here's the promo code for Airstream Supply Company. And really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. And if there were a bunch of questions that we didn't have time to get to, so if you could please shoot us a note at hello@airstream.com, HELLO@airstream.com. We will be sure to get those answered next week. Have a good weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.